Hey everyone, it's Will, Gamer Dad, with another video for you. So of course, in today's video, I'm going to be revealing the farming results over the last 10 weeks. And of course, as we are approaching the 5th anniversary of Global, as well as the merger between Japan and Global servers, I'll have some reflection and some thoughts about that as well. Now, if you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate it. I also do have a Patreon account for those who want to support me this way. So first of all, what has Gamer Dad been up to in terms of the grind? Well, as you can see here and throughout the video, I'm mainly working on VC Grasta, as well as grinding for light and shadow on story units. So with my red keys over the course of the last 10 weeks, I first worked on Valette's VC Grasta, which by the way, of course, is in Man-Eating Marsh. By the way, you can also grind out Cyrus's light at the same time. So a lot of times I do prioritize doing VC Grastas that also can grind light or shadow points. Now there are some dungeons that do not do that, which is unfortunate, in which case you just have to bite the bullet and do it if you need to. So after I finished Valette's, and if you're wondering, I only did a regular VC, I did not do a true VC Grasta for her. I then went on to getting a true VC Grasta for Sesta, because Sesta does good, and Sesta is quite broken even as of now. You've seen me have many videos with Sesta, clawing her way to victory, and of course, she's just too broken. After that, it's on to Moonlight Forest. And then actually, this is the first time I've run Moonlight Forest very hard for a very long time. That's later on in the video, and that was coinciding with the release of Wanefika. So her tome is there, and so I did grind out the VC Grasta for her. Again, not a true VC Grasta, just enough to get her the extra +5 stats. In terms of green keys, I did finally 255 Ashtear. I didn't show the clip here in this video, but she is completely done. And then while I finished the main story, I did work on Azami, which is present-day Garlia. That was kind of a waste because, let's be honest, the fragments and other things you get, as well as the Grasta, is pretty limited. It's not the good stuff. However, it then moved on to Entrana, which is obviously grinding out the shadow for Camouflage, and of course working through those parts of the dungeon at the same time. So one thing to note is that, of course, getting Opuses, Treatises, and Codexes is a lot slower since the Stellar Awakening, which is also known as the SA announcement, which does overlap in this video. Notably, actually, that occurred, right after this video, pretty much. So for the last 10 weeks. And specifically, I do not use Sibir gems to buy any sort of keys, red or green. I think I mentioned that in an earlier video, but just in case you're still wondering, I have decided completely to stop, and I still don't recommend it unless you do have a ton, because let's be honest, we now are on the advent of having another retro unit getting S8, and so you'll be needing to catch up that way. Or maybe if you have like the dual subscription going forward, so you get 180 Sibir's gems instead of 120. Now, I don't have a subscription, so I can't tell you if that's kicked in now or maybe just next month. That being said, they are 400 Sibir gems each for each of the 2 retro star charts, and of course you do have to have a 5-star Melissa before Thursday's update in order to get credit for at least 1 out of 3 awakenings. So if you only have 4.5 Melissa, now's the time to side grade her ahead of time. It's well worth your 5 chance and the 1 Slayer tome, which of course is found in Industrial Ruins very hard. Now, in terms of the reflections and fireside talks with Gamer Dad during these kind of farming videos, this Thursday will be the first update that will be simultaneous with Japan, which is the Rise Saga Part 2. So, what does this mean? Much of this mentioned in this video will be a review, but it's also part of the reflection as I was thinking about what to speak about and just kind of moving forward, since we are at a milestone and a crossroads of sorts. First of all, I believe this will be the first year that Global does not get a Global first unit. I mean, we are at the 5-year anniversary, you can technically say that SA Melissa will be the global first. However, it's not unique to global now that we're merging with Japan. So unless they have plans in the future where they release units specifically for one group of people instead of both and kind of flip that around, I don't see that happening moving forward. I don't even know how the programming will work, being that we are on one server. Now, in terms of the other unit that's going to be released this Thursday, I believe she's called Melpipvia. And that is part of the Rise Saga release, and so therefore would not be designated as a global first unit. I know that during the live stream, and again, make sure you do check out the live stream on the Another Eden Global official channel. Some of you were disappointed, kind of like, oh, this is kind of underwhelming. We're not really getting a lot of awesome stuff, and so on and so forth. I believe we do get some login bonuses for the next few weeks. I do feel that that's not really global anniversary so much as just part of the Rise Saga release, because everyone should get that. And also there are some social media campaigns, but again, not sure if we're going to celebrate separately or celebrate together, because let's be honest, now that we're on Japan server, we might actually merge in terms of celebrating the anniversary with Japan. And we also did just finish up, which will be in a couple more days, 10 polls as well as the Whisper of Time drop. So I mean, it's not like we haven't got anything at the advent of the merger. I mean, it's not really specifically to global first units and so on and so forth. So I wouldn't be too disappointed just yet. Let's wait and see if global does get anything exciting, or if we're just going to celebrate together. And honestly, does it really matter? I mean, if we all get it together, I think that's not bad anyways. Alright, so back to global first. During the live stream, we reflected upon the last few years, and so remember that after the first SA unit the first global first unit was actually released on year 2, because we're 5 years into the game, of course. Melissa was first, and I think back to that anniversary when Melissa was first available. Many players, because we were global first, right, including myself, did not foresee the absolute beast of a unit that Melissa was, and the impact that Flash Strike Sant would have on the game. I mean, she is the first true first turn AF unit, and she is also the precursor to zone setting moves and Grasta. She also became the most divisive unit and topic in the history of AE at the time. And I'll put a link in the description below as to my video that I made soon after Melissa was released. Just as a quick review of what happened, because she was so broken, and in that time, nothing was like that before. Basically, we're doing our first turn unit AF, bosses and almost anything else could not counter that. Even during HP stoppers, most bosses did not hit you, not like what you see now where they come back with breaking zones and other weird things like that. They just literally stood still, and if you had Melissa, you were essentially in the halves where you could use a mid-range team or a loser team, walk right through all the content, and then afterwards you get to brag about it, put up videos. I remember a lot of smaller channels or new channels, they're kind of like, wow, I'm first to beat this manifest, I'm first to beat this boss. And those without Melissa were kind of like, well, I can't follow that, because other than getting Melissa in the banner, I don't even think a Star Dream was available at that very time. And so if you didn't get it on the banner and she disappeared, well, unfortunately you got nothing, right? And so there were even times where you even had to start saying in your title, no Melissa strat and stuff like that. It's pretty ridiculous. Again, review my video, and it's kind of like a flashback in time. Sometimes I actually look back on my own channel over the 1,000 videos I made and kind of like, wow, that was how game was like back then. And of course, things are very different now, but we're living in the future and the present as opposed to the past. That being said, I mean, when we are reflecting on Melissa SA, you can't ignore the original effect that Melissa had on the game. So again, check out that video, links in the description below, especially if you weren't around at the time she was first released. You'll find the comments extremely interesting, especially with the different various players who commented both for and against Melissa type strats. Okay, moving on from Melissa, which was broken in her own right, and I dare say still very useful as a niche, one of the few Flash Strike stats out there without any conditions. We had in year 3, Eva, and if you know by that time, her banner broke me. I mean, literally, I was broke. I spent like 23k on her, barely squeaked out a win, because I think I did like 19, 2, and 2, and man, I had nothing left. But when I got her, I was happy to have paid the price, because at the time, she was extremely broken, and that was the common theme with most of these, global first units. I mean, Eva was the first person who started Lunatic right up front. I mean, she attacked twice. She could boost her own, I think it's speed and int stackable, and she can hit up to 4 times with Zorch, leave breaks after each time, and consume her own breaks. I mean, you see vestiges of that in more powerful units now, like Elemental Break. But I mean, if you think about that mechanic of you hit and break or leave breaks, Eva was the first to pioneer that. So all these crazy things you see now, I mean, units like Eva really did pioneer a lot of that, not to mention other broken things like VCing in Magic Zone, which no one did, and just, she had such a varied kit, and her raw DPS was through the roof. I think she was also one of the first units, I think there was a YouTube channel, 7th Archangel, using solo Eva to beat the twins, and at the time twins were obviously still extremely difficult, and I remember watching that video and being like, whoa, like Eva was still really new. And again, remember that we didn't have any information on Eva, and he was able to construct a video that used her to solo that, as well as the Unseen at the time. Even when I did the 5-star review, I actually borrowed my own friend's account, because I didn't have it at the time, and the more I played with her, the more I realized she is super broken, and well worth the investment at the time. Now, of course, now this is 2 years after Eva has been released, and so, looking back, it's the same thing. Oh, did I really need her? Oh yeah, you really needed her, because again, it's the same thing. You saw a lot of strategies with both Eva, and don't forget, right after Eva, Flamelopus or Flam was there, so you saw strategies such as the Eva Flam Pry kind of thing, where you have a Pry tanking everything, and you have Eva Flam following it up. And don't forget that they can eat off each other. You can leave a Zorch last break, and then have a Neptune clean that up, and oh, it was so ridiculous. Oh man, oh man, oh man. Fun times. Okay, so another year passes, and we now have our more recent, or our last global first unit, Efi. Efi was debuted last year in 2023, around this time. And yes, she's another broken unit with an extremely unique blood contract mechanic that allowed you to zombie your units. Each of those could tank essentially anything. Not to mention all her varied kits, as in first Shade Zone setter, she had a triple debuff, she had decent DPS, she had lots of everything, boosting, and so on and so forth. I mean, I don't even need to go on it. We've always talked about Efi. You've seen my 5-star review of her. You've seen me use her in teams. You've seen everyone use her in teams. I would say nowadays, after a whole year, she's still quite top tier. However, as you probably have noticed, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, the boss's mechanics have gotten to a new level of power creep as well. As your units have gotten more powerful, this is what I've always been afraid of. The devs now design units and bosses that can counter those mechanics. Like Efi's blood contract does not fully 100% tank every type of hit anymore, as you probably noticed. You're kind of like, oh, when I used Efi, I still lost. Remember with S.A. Aldo's third fight, the Stella fight? If you use Efi in front line, she actually dies. So it's not like she was invincible like she was when she first came out. So I do feel that that's kind of the way that the units have now been nerfed with future releases of bosses. And I know that the devs don't nerf units like some other games, but certainly mechanics have nerfed the capability and usefulness of many units and rosters out there. Anyways, year four is gone, and now here we are at the cusp of the 5th anniversary with S.A. Melissa. Now, I'll have to see if she's even more broken now that she has her SA, or more of just an afterthought. I know that they did increase her main moves, just kind of like any retrofit, like the Sukiyas or the Suzettes of the world. I mean, it looks like she's gotten a lot better, but we can't tell because honestly, the damage mods haven't been calculated yet since there isn't even any gameplay. But I'm hoping she slaps and slaps hard. I'm sure the ones who kind of data mine the information and upload to the wiki will then be able to see if her SA move does 10k mod or is a weak 2K, 3K mod in more of an afterthought. I mean, at the end of the day, any improvement to a first year unit that's like how many years old, like 3 years old, is still welcome, because if you think about it, how bad is it really? I mean, you have an old unit, you're getting a refresh, and even if you decide not to invest 800 Superior Gems or summon additionally for Melissa, I still feel that that's still extra value. Now, speaking about SAs, with this 5th anniversary, we can also reflect on the SA system, since it's now been out for almost 3 months now, right? So coincidentally, again, from the time of my last farming video, you can actually check at that time my initial thoughts on the SA system and see if my predictions and criticisms were correct. And unfortunately, for the most part, I have to say that initial impressions were correct. It's actually gotten a little bit worse than what I had initially thought, but I mean, here's not really the time to be negative, just more of reflecting and seeing the reality of the system and kind of the way of the game and the state of the game. Now, at the beginning of the SA system being announced in Japan, most of us were kind of like wait and see, with some of us being for the system and some of us being against the system. I mean, after all, getting new level 100s, extra moves that can pause before the bosses, it sounds all great and awesome right now, right? But the other initial impressions of that, where there's going to be a new level of power creep. Surprisingly and ironically, not nearly as much for the players, but more for the super bosses. Because at the end of the day, SA units can be extremely powerful if they start off awakened, aka you summon on the actual banner itself, but they are significantly weaker and have more flaws if they're not SA'd, right? So it's almost like we are getting now 4.75 stars instead of a regular 5-star. And then of course, if you hit the SA right off the bat, then you're almost getting a 5.5 stars or 5.5 stars, since WFS doesn't want to refer to this as a 6-star system. So let me know in the comments below how you feel about me ranking units as 4.75 stars designation. I'm planning to use it a lot more on rating future units in future banner if it applies to that. And some of the examples are, for example, the mod is much weaker, and so only with the SA you get all the power up front, and so on and so forth. So hopefully you like what my friend and I have come up with in terms of the 4.75 star. If you do, make sure you comment below to let me know to continue using it, and see your thoughts of if you agree that a lot of the non-SA units are just 4.75 per se. As a reference, I do consider new SA units. I compare them against the best units in 2023 as a competition to see if they are better than some of the best that we've had in the past. And if they're not, honestly, then I have to rate them as such, right? If they're not, they're not. Okay, anyways, back to SA units. The banners rates have been nerfed because 4.5s are worthless, aka no Stellar Awakening gauge. Now you have a 0.8 versus a 1.2 banner because 4.5s are not worth getting. And don't forget, as you've seen with some of the ES and AS banners, there is no normal style uprate 4.5 or 5-star, which is pretty ridiculous. Banners have been shortened. Quicker releases of banners have also occurred. You also see a discrepancy being paid banners are only available for like 16 days or 2 weeks, and the free banner is only available for 30 days instead of 60. So hopefully this kind of release rate slows down now that we're all caught to Japan. And more importantly, I hope that WFS increases the flow of the all Cosmos Star Charts for all players. Because let's be honest, whether or not you're free to play, light spender, heavy spender, or even whale, no one's going to turn down more all Cosmos Star Charts because you'll use them, especially even for whales, if they only hit a 4.5 instead of the actual 5-star SA, right? I mean, everyone will welcome that. WFS, if you're watching or listening, hey, I don't need you to flood me where I'm going to get all of it, because I realize, you've modified the game, you need more profit and stuff like that. I mean, that's really what comes down to it. I get that. Just don't make it so we hardly get any, because it's literally impossible for us to continue having a roster as it kind of decreases in value and quality over time. Now, that being said, this is not a complaining video. At this point, with the Stellar Awakening systems here to stay, the main thing is to enjoy the game for what it is, and honestly, work and continue to build your roster within the confines of the new SA system. Now, some of the features of the game that may push you towards FOMOing the latest unit are things like the Ashtear Archive, where you're going for high scores with the top tier units doing as much damage as possible, or even the newest levels of Boss Rush, aka Battle Simulator. You've seen some of the videos out there with some of the more difficult extreme stages requiring or making it easier if you have really powerful teams. Now, my advice is to take it slower and play at your own pace just like before. And if anything, don't be stressed out about not clearing it in the first week. Now, first of all, with the advent of Japan here, it's not like you're going to have a lot of Japan videos to watch. So anyone who's been using Japan to kind of keep up and use their strategies from Japan and publish it as their own, it's going to be a lot tougher for a lot of people to do that. And so, you'll see a lot slower releases of many videos from global players, and that's understandable as well. Even for me, I was feeling extreme stress and pressure on myself to continue pushing cutting-edge boss clears as soon as I could. But honestly, I realized it wasn't worth it. Both because of game mechanics have been more, to put it lightly, more BS, as well as, honestly, real life responsibilities and enjoyment. So, as I've been busy with more work or just more family things, hey, I have less time, less energy, and I'm not going to beat myself up for hours thinking up crazy strategies, because as you well know, I try not to copy anybody and come up with unique ways of clearing things that are still relatively easy to follow. Now, that being said, these last 5 years have been, for the most part, a blast. I mean, many ups and downs, both from a game perspective to a channel's perspective, and even within the dreaded COVID years. And for that last point, AE has kept me busy and sane, and for that I'll always be thankful. I would actually also like to take this opportunity to sincerely thank each and every one of you, from my very first subscribers and viewers. And yes, I remember those days when I had 2 subs, 5 subs, 20. I celebrated when I had 30, 50, 100. And to past and current Patreon and YouTube members, financial supporters. And talking and meeting you all through this game and the lifetime of this game has been a wonderful experience. And I would never have been possible for that to happen without us all loving and continuing to play another Eden. So again, thank you all. And hopefully that we can all continue to, chat as well as this game is around, as well as I continue having the time and ability to play. Anyways, back to power creep. Like I demonstrated recently, you can always wait a few months until you have the time and energy or the latest unit, and then come back and clear all those older pesky bosses you couldn't or didn't kill earlier. Hey, I deem that a relaxing Eden. And a perfect example is when I use Sesta to clear all those last bounty fights from 3.0 main story. Or, in the near future, I'm going to be using all those SA units I have to clear the Chronos Empire super bosses that I haven't touched yet. It'll be great, and most importantly, it's going to be fun, because beating down on stuff is fun. And for those who weren't here since the very beginning, I'd like to point out that in year 1, at least for global when we are far away from Japan, there actually were bosses that were not clearable if you didn't have the right gadget unit, aka Otherlands Barakai is a perfect example. Varus, if you didn't have a Ewan or Melina at the time, it's essentially an auto loss. I don't even know if free-to-play strategies existed at that time, or if they did, it would take freaking forever. I think Varus actually had a very tight DPS check where if you run out of turns, you're going to start slaughtered with the summoned chimeras at the time. And back to that, if you happen to run free-to-play teams, some fights could take forever, and they are extremely difficult with a very tight rotation. Examples of that were things like Ratley Otherlands. So without a proper water team, like myself, I didn't even have a full 5-star team. It was a nightmare, and I only could clear each boss once until I started upgrading my water team. And I do remember specifically at the time being really upset because I did not have Shani, which I missed on. I didn't have many stones, of course, at the time. I did not have Aegis Mighty because chants and treatises were also impossible to get. And so that's very similar to nowadays, where star charts are going to be kind of near impossible to get in the very beginning, and I'm hoping that obviously over time there'll be more ways to farm it. I mean, after all, year 1 and 2, when AS Suzette was released as our first AS unit, treaty suits were super impossible to get, and it wasn't like chants were flowing like they are now for at least endgame users. And so, there is a bright light at the end of the tunnel if WFS decides to reconsider, or maybe they have a plan in place where they're going to slowly release things like that. Anyways, earlier players, especially in global, also didn't have expectations of beating everything right away, because frankly, we couldn't. Like, I passed on killing Leviathan very early on for many months. Other examples were Mimi, where I struggled to barely beat that optional super boss. Melvillithin was something I waited many months for until I got AS Nagi, and the list goes on. So honestly, a lot of newer players who haven't been through that pain have it pretty good. Just grab a few units off the top 10 units from my Star Dream list, and you're probably clearing the first year or 2 or 3 years of content with no sweat, including the optional content. I mean, even Void weapon dual hatchels are now a breeze, while at the time, non-Melissa teams were a nightmare to clear with. I will say, I have to humble brag here. I was actually able to do it without Melissa because a lot of my viewers wanted me to do so, because even though I had her on my roster, I purposely chose not to use her so that other viewers could copy my strats, and I'll be honest, to also showcase my abilities in designing different boss clears at the time as well. Now, that being said, make sure you do temper your expectations in clearing everything or getting all the units, especially moving forward. With the power creep and the boss mechanics, things are only going to get a lot harder. And with the SA system, it's very likely that your roster will not be able to completely keep up with cutting-edge strategies unless you are a whale. And that's all. Honestly, that's okay. I plan to be choosy with my unit selection in my Should You Summon videos, just like in the early days, and passing on new units or units I don't have any version of. I remember passing specifically on, for example, AS Daenerys, where at the time, AS Daenerys was the only magic wind unit, and so many people told me, Will, you'll need it. You'll need it for the dual hatches. You'll need this, you'll need that. Or Philly, there were a lot of units that came up were breaking strides at the time. And honestly, at the time, yeah, you really regretted not getting the unit. But after a few months, things were okay. Things will be okay. So just like passing on the new units, and you'll just have to save stones for must-have units. And so obviously moving forward, it's going to be very important for at least my friend and I, even without the power of foresight, to work together to evaluate units and continually evaluate units and skill sets of upcoming units even before they are released, so that we will be able to continue to deliver great advice on who to go for and who to get in order to improve your roster. If anything, hopefully my friend and I, through our channel, have proven ourselves in thinking outside the box and bringing innovative roster strategies to you, such as being the first free-to-play players to figure out how to 255 a unit, or recommending AS Rosetta as a top-tier unit even before Ultima did. Coincidentally, they actually re-ranked AS Rosetta to 99 after our recommendations. So, I mean, that was something I remember as very cutting edge, and we were actually in the minority when I recommended it. Final thoughts then. Even as we merge with Japan, even as we have SA units, and even if power creep never seems to end, we are all still here, and we can and will continue to enjoy the game until the end of service. Now let's hope that it is many years into the future as opposed to much sooner. And let's hope that some of the recent issues with power creep, banner length, technical issues with Android, and star chart system gets ironed out as well. Anyways, thanks for watching, and thanks for listening to Gamer Dad drone on for over 30 minutes. We'll see you next time.